World-renowned medium Tyler Henry has an extraordinary UFO story that's corroborated by two other people, which gives it, in my mind, more credibility than if he just witnessed it himself. And I want to share that with the world because I think a lot of people don't know about it. And in fact, it's one of my favorite UFO stories that I've come across. For those that don't know, Tyler Henry is best known as the star of Hollywood Medium on E! And Life After Death on Netflix, shows where he's given readings to celebrities ranging from the Kardashians to Megan Fox. But before we jump in to Tyler Henry's extraordinary UFO story, I want to mention an amazing article that I read by journalist Marek von Rennenkampf in The Hill, titled Mysterious Orbs Demand Scientific Study. Here's an excerpt from his fine article, and I quote, "On July 24th, the Senate confirmed former Air Force fighter pilot Matthew Lohmeier as the Undersecretary of the Air Force, the department's second highest civilian position. While in high school, Lohmeier had a remarkable UFO encounter. He shares his encounter on the YouTube channel Before School. Let's dig into it."
And what I shared with my wife thereafter and had always been puzzled about was that this ball of light that we saw descending down over our head got close enough for me to look at it and into it, and it seemed to be buzzing with life, but it wasn't man-made. It was very well organized, very spherical, and it seemed to be very conscious of the two of us that were sitting there in the Arizona mountains, like it was observing us. And it was a distinct impression that I had that I was being watched, observed, that there was a level of interest from the orb to us, and it frightened us. And so we got up and we ran to the car and we ran away, and that thing zipped up and disappeared in the sky. It was dark, it was nighttime.
Now, Matthew Lohmeier, the current Undersecretary of the Air Force, who was just speaking, he said that when he was watching the movie Phenomenon by James Fox that was released in, I think, 2020, he heard within that documentary them air traffic controllers talking about a phenomenon that they occasionally see at their airfields. It's not common, it's rather rare, of these balls of light that seem to zip around the flight lines and be able to defy the known laws of physics incredibly fast, and they were like big orbs of light, orange or yellowish in color. And so he paused the film because seeing that in the Phenomenon movie triggered his memory of an experience he had with the same phenomenon when he was in the mountains of Arizona. And just like Tyler Henry, he did not witness this alone. He was with a girl at the time. It was corroborated. And he even asked the girl about it in the presence of his wife to show his wife without bringing up any details specifically. And she gave the details among them. And so, this just goes to show how real this phenomenon is. I mean, at a certain point, I would argue if enough people experience something, it becomes highly plausible that it exists to extremely likely. Even Timothy Phillips, the former deputy director of the Department of Defense's UFO Analysis Office, acknowledged the existence of these phenomena. Now, he may not put it under the same umbrella of Tyler Henry's story or the Undersecretary of the Air Force, Matthew Lohmeier's story. But from my perspective, there is a connection.
There are, there's some phenomena out there that we just don't understand. Especially, have you heard of the fiery orbs?
Oh, yeah.
That when we start seeing like a corona or a discharge, a plasma discharge, and when we've had some of these really, really strange events, from the reports of the security personnel on site, these devices they're attempting to conceal themselves. In one case, when a truck from Main Side was coming out onto the range, this device stopped, hovered, went off the road, and turned its friggin' lights off. Now, to me, that tells me there's a human in the loop or on the loop. Because if it was an alien, they could care less. That's not what happened, okay? Now, there's some strange stuff going on there.
Let's return to Mark's article, and I quote, "Such phenomena have been reported since at least World War II. Balls of fire stalked U.S. fighters," read the headline of a front-page January 2nd, 1945 New York Times article describing the mysterious Foo Fighters that toyed with American pilots in the European and Pacific theaters. I want to add to what Mark stated by giving you an excerpt from the book titled UFOs, A Scientist Explains What We Know and Don't Know by Robert Powell. And I quote, "The modern UFO era began during the Second World War. The modern era did not begin with one or two sightings of an unexplained object in the sky. It began with many sightings from reliable American, British, and German pilots during the years 1942 to 1945. There are over 100 documented cases of objects that the pilots called Foo Fighters. These incidents are documented in the reports that squadrons made after completing their missions. They usually reported plasma-like ovoid balls of light that were 3 to 10 feet in size. Often, multiple Foo Fighters would fly alongside the aircraft for several minutes before racing away at speeds estimated to be thousands of miles per hour. A typical example of a Foo Fighter report was made by a British pilot while flying near Strasbourg, France, the night of December 23 to 24, 1944. At 0600 hours, saw two lights coming towards a aircraft from the ground. Upon reaching altitude of our plane, they leveled off and stayed on my tail for approximately 2 minutes. Light appeared to be a large orange glow. After staying with aircraft for approximately 2 minutes, they would peel off and turn away, fly along level for a few minutes, and then go out. They appeared to be under perfect control at all times. If there were just a few of these reports, then it would be easier to dismiss them as pilot error, ball lightning, or the phenomenon known as St. Elmo's fire. But with over 100 documented reports and likely many more undocumented reports, the evidence argues for an investigation into what the pilots were seeing." End quote. Now it's time to share medium Tyler Henry's extraordinary UFO story. This excerpt comes from his book, Here and Hereafter, How Wisdom from the Departed Can Transform Your Life Now. And I quote, "In 2016, I lived in an apartment with my then boyfriend and parents. One Sunday morning, the printer in the room malfunctioned, and I asked my mom to help me undo the jam. She obliged, and we worked on fixing it on my bedroom floor for about 15 minutes. I was becoming increasingly frustrated, but then, out of nowhere, it happened. Suddenly, the printer I was staring at intensely lit up as if someone was shining a flashlight directly on it. From behind me, a light source was illuminating the room within seconds. A bizarre buzzing noise radiated through the entire room and made my hair stand on edge. My mom and I looked at each other and then turned around to see the source of the light. Only about 6 feet away near the ceiling was a moving light source, bright blue in color. It measured about 3 feet wide and 3 feet long, and I've never seen anything like it. We were stunned. We both watched as this light source near the ceiling began to gradually change. The bright sky blue light that electrified the room began appearing to collapse on itself. And as this happened, it was encircled in a yellow light that floated like a mist. From this mist, golden embers of light fell to the ground onto the carpet below. It lasted no more than a few moments. We watched as the light seemed to collapse under its own weight. When I saw the golden embers begin falling to the ground, I leapt underneath it and tried to grab any residue that fell on the floor. My efforts were in vain. As I grasped at the light with my mom beside me, my then boyfriend walked into the room and his jaw dropped. All three of us were witnessing the single most bizarre experience any one of us had ever witnessed and probably ever will. After only a few seconds, the light collapsed entirely and disappeared. The static noise no longer more than a fleeting buzz. None of us could make any sense of the experience. We took into consideration everything from ball lightning to an electrical malfunction, but none of us could even begin to understand the profound effect the light had on all our lives. We didn't talk about it to the extent that you'd expect. It was a deeply personal experience that impacted us all in different ways. My mom has a hard time discussing it and acknowledges that it was the oddest thing to ever occur to her. My then boyfriend and I still stay in touch, and I recently asked him about the light. Surprisingly, he said that the sound was what initially stunned him. Even before he walked in, the whole apartment seemed to radiate with a noise that he heard in the living room, which prompted him to come into the bedroom where he witnessed the light. The fact that there was no residue from the golden embers left me frustrated and confused. The beads of light that fell from the original source were about the size of a half-dollar bill, and yet they left no remnants or burns on the carpet. Whatever we witnessed that Sunday morning in a small apartment in LA originated from somewhere else. Of that, I am certain. My own experience fit the definition of a mystical experience. It was hard to describe or speak about for an abnormal amount of time. It set me down a path of wanting to understand what it was and why it appeared in front of three people. It was short, but it was the most overwhelming experience of my life. I won't say that it felt like the presence of God, but there was an indescribable feeling of sentience to the light. It seemed like someone was in the room with me. This forever changed my views on the unknown. And if it hadn't been witnessed by two other set of eyeballs, I wouldn't have believed my eyes. End quote. A phrase that I came across that Kelly Chase recently used is ecology of other intelligences or different intelligences, which is such an interesting framing. And it might be that there are many intelligences that share a space with us that we can't usually see or experience. In that light, maybe the object that Tyler Henry encountered with his mother and his boyfriend then comes from one origin. And the object that Undersecretary Matthew Lohmeier encountered with that girl comes from another origin. And maybe the spheres or the orbs that fighter pilots experienced in World War II that we call Foo Fighters came from yet another origin. We don't know. And that's all the more reason we need disclosure so that we can have this discussion about these intelligences and attempt to figure out where they come from, what they are, and what they're doing. Many of these incidents where people witness unambiguous anomalous lights that give every impression they're under intelligent control are highly corroborated. With the Undersecretary of the Air Force, Matthew Lohmeier, there was a girl with him. With medium Tyler Henry, his mother and his then boyfriend were with him. With the World War II events, with the Foo Fighters, as I conveyed, Robert Powell in his book stated that there were 100 documented cases, extremely corroborated. Every impression is that these lights are under intelligent control. Something is going on, and this has been going on a long time. And the fact that we're still under a cover-up where governments have more information than they let on about this enigma, but they want 8 billion of us to live as if there's nothing to see here, is a crime against humanity, a crime against science and history and philosophy and theology and common sense and just common decency. I will share with you an extremely important clip from June 24th, 2025, the Weaponized podcast. In it, the world-renowned expert on the UFO and nuke connection discusses that connection. And then I'll give you some commentary.
Do you have a message, just real quick at the last end, do you have a message for our audience in reaction to the Wall Street Journal about UFOs and nukes? You've been doing this for so long. You're so specialized in it. Do you have like just a blanket message that people should really understand, the average person?
I would say, my humble opinion is if you look at UFO activity post-World War II, it just shot through the roof, and it's been at elevated levels compared to prior to that time frame. Well, what happened at that point? We invented nuclear weapons and used them in Japan. And I've talked to witnesses who actually witnessed a UFO at a plutonium production facility months prior to the bombings of Japan. On 3 separate occasions in January of 45, a UFO was hovering on one object on three occasions, hovered directly over the plant and was chased away by Hellcat fighters. So it's been going on. It's long-standing, it's widespread, and it's ongoing. Now, I stopped doing serious research in 2010. I suspect things have happened since then, probably last week at some base somewhere, but I won't know about it. Hopefully someone will come forward and talk about it to someone.
In a sense, it might be the very heart of this mystery. Of the UFO activity.
I don't disagree with that, and I refrain from saying that usually because it sounds egotistical. But yeah, I think my work is very pertinent and conceivably central to what's been going on in the last 60, 70 years.
Do you think that the UFOs have become more present because of nuclear weapons? That's what you're saying?
I do. I believe that.
So let me get this straight. For 70 plus years, UFOs have been all over our planet, in our oceans, in our atmosphere, even in near Earth orbit. People have alleged abductions. People are having corroborated experiences with orbs. There's a huge UFO nuke connection that's highly corroborated, intensely so. Multiple myriad highly corroborated incidences with nuclear facilities, storage units, ICBM facilities, etc. And yet, we don't talk about this because we don't have the smoking gun evidence of this. That is true. But there is an element in our world that allegedly does, and I believe does. Governments, aerospace corporations, militaries, and intelligence agencies. And I don't think that's a coincidence, but that's beyond the scope of this discussion. Suffice to say, the phenomenon can choose who gets the smoking gun evidence and who doesn't. Nevertheless, if we are truly not alone, and the phenomenon is this integrated and engaged with humanity and the planet, why aren't our greatest minds talking about it? Why are they not aware of the smoking gun evidence? Why are governments lying to 8 billion people on something this intrinsic and fundamental to our reality? This has got to end. This has got to end. This is madness. I don't see any common sense associated with this scenario. I see madness. I see insanity. I see disdain for the public. And it's got to end. And regarding medium Tyler Henry, I hope one day I get to interview him. I think it would be a great show. A man can dream, can he? Please don't forget to subscribe. If you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my Patreon, become a YouTube member. You can give me a one-time donation. All those potentialities can be accessed in the description box below. Or you can slap a like on this bad boy, and I'll appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.